Welcome back everybody to another video on Motovlog Vlogs, and today I'm out on the 2022 Africa Twin Adventure Sports just for a little spin before it goes back this week, and then I'm going to shoot my review tomorrow in the studio. So far I've been absolutely loving it. I rode it to the London Motorcycle Show the other day. That was a decent day in the saddle and I just found it so comfortable. Brilliant wind protection. I mean, look at that tank. It really does flare out to keep you out of, you know, the sting of the wind. Also, you get about, I think it's 25 litres. It's not got a massive range, probably about 230, 240 I reckon I was getting on the motorway, but good enough. And honestly, after that much time in the saddle, you'll be after a break. Here we've got some little adaptive headlights, cornering sensitive, because it does have an inertial measurement unit, so it's measuring lean angles not only for the rider aids like traction control and ABS, but also, yeah, the headlights and I nearly said this thing. DCT, I nearly said DTC. Dual clutch transmission. So this is effectively automatic. You can put it into either auto or manual here. This is neutral, drive, and then around this side you've got your plus for going up the gears when it's in manual, and your minus down here amongst all these other buttons for going down the gears. And yeah, there's plenty to play with there. But I believe the IMU affects it so that it's less likely to shift gear mid-corner and unsettle the balance of the bike. And I think maybe going downhill and stuff like that, it will hold the gear and not shift up so you don't lose engine braking. Beautiful exhaust note on this bike. It's got a control valve, so similar to something like the Fireblade and some of their other bikes like that. I think you get them on the new Speed Triple as well. So one of these pipes opens up as the revs climb, and it gives you a bit more torque in the low revs and then a bit more free-flowing horsepower at the top. What else have we got to see? Adjustable windscreen, nice and tall here. Good wind protection, not quite as good as the NT 1100, which is a touring bike based upon the same platform. But yeah, it's still pretty decent. And then you've got this big TFT display. It does have CarPlay if you plug into the USB port here, but generally I've just been mounting my phone here and using kind of sat nav on the phone, and then just taking advantage of that big TFT dash. And we've got heated grips as standard on this Adventure Sports, is that right? Flash it up on the screen now. And also a charging socket over here, which is decent if you do want to mount any other accessories. Cruise control as well. Let me just show you this screen. Pretty nice. That's the night view. It normally comes with a white background and black text, but I don't think it looks that nice, whereas that looks pretty decent to me. Tubeless spoke wheels. Looks very nice indeed. And Nissin brakes. Not top-notch Brembos, but they certainly do the job. I get a little bit of squeal with those when you start slowing down, but that's not really a performance issue. Now, it might be something that goes away as they sort of bed in. Oh yeah, let's point out these integrated luggage mounting points here, so you can get hard luggage for it. And to be honest, this rack that comes with it is pretty good if you want to use something like rock straps or bungees. A couple more bungee points under here, and I put a 60-litre duffel bag on there when I went to the London show. It's big enough to fit this huge backpack inside with all my camera gear, so I don't have to wear it on my back. And it held onto there fine, so that's a nice feature, definitely. And I should also mention, actually, that you can set the preload through the dash on this bike, because it's the one with the electronic suspension. So the damping is tied into the rider modes. You can see suspension is soft in user mode 1. I've got a user mode 2, which I've set up for firm suspension. But yeah, you can see preload here with one rider, passenger and luggage, and you can set either solo, 2 up, solo with luggage, 2 up with luggage, and it'll just automatically adjust. Although I think you have to be stationary, but still, it's quite nice to be able to do that without getting tools out, especially if you swap configurations quite a lot, which I do. Anyway, let's get on the road and then you can see it and hear it in action. All right, let's fire her up. What do you think of that exhaust note? Sounds pretty cool if you ask me. Anyway, yeah, to get going, you've got drive on this side, so stick it in drive, and then just a twist of the throttle, with this DCT bike and you're off, no clutch to muck about with. I could have also added that you've got a handbrake there, because you can't leave it in gear, of course. So if you are on an incline, especially with the bike luggaged up, then it might be a good idea to stick that on. I always wait for as long as possible here to make sure the road ahead is as clear as it can be. And off we go! Woo! Now you can already hear it chugging away. If you're just in drive mode with the DCT, it does like to seek for the lowest gear possible, probably for fuel economy, and so it really does help to stick it in sport mode in this sort of riding where you're, you know, going through the gears a bit, or if you're in town and you're at lower speeds, I like it to keep the revs up a little bit. But then obviously you can use drive if you're just cruising on the motorway or something like that, where you might prefer that extra economy. Now you've got the auto and manual button there, so I can stick it in manual here and then just manage the gears myself through these corners. And again, that's something I like to do, especially if you're on sort of more enjoyable roads like this. Now I forgot I just left it in that softer suspension setting, so... Oh, I love this engine. It really is much better than 100 horsepower suggests. It's brilliant. Yeah, so the suspension is in user mode 1, which I've set to soft, so if I just press this up button, it goes into 2, and immediately you feel that firmness come in. Now it is a little bit more jittery, as you'd expect if you manually increase the damping on a, you know, normal mechanical suspension, but it does remove that bounciness. And that's one thing I've noticed with this bike, with it completely backed off, even if you want a comfortable riding mode like the or suspension setting rather, like on the motorway, where you just want it to soak up the bumps and sort of cornering tightness is not really what you're after. It does kind of go up and down a bit, so I think if you're at all susceptible to seasickness, then it might just be worth upping it a little bit. Generally it's a great feature though, and I think this is probably the first time I've ridden a Honda with their, you know, electronic suspension system, but I found it pretty good, and it made me really think that the NT1100, which I rode on the launch just at the end of last year, a brilliant touring bike, really great wind protection, both up here because it's got like a bit more to the edges, but down on your legs as well. It really kept the rain off your feet, and that bike would be awesome with full electronic suspension and all of the works. Now they have tried to price it quite aggressively, I think, that bike, so I forgot I was in manual. Yeah, they've tried to price the NT quite aggressively. I think it's 11,999 in manual spec, and then if you want the DCT box like on this bike, then you have to pay a little bit more, $1,000 I think, so 12,999, and that's just to compete with some of the other sort of mid-level tourers on the market. But I do hope they come up with like a premium spec version, because it would be such a good bike, and you could almost argue that it's nearly going to be sticking it then to something like the R1250 RT from BMW, which is a super accomplished tourer, but you know, spec for spec, the NT would be pretty good. It would push the cost up a lot though. I mean, this is the top of the Africa Twin lineup, so DCT and the electronic suspension add into the price, and I think it comes in at like 17,999 or something like that. So really it's in a, you know, completely different price bracket, and yeah, I can understand that sensitivity to keep the NT competitive, but riding this bike with all of its features and comfort and whatnot really have made me realize just how accomplished it is. The only thing that the NT would offer above this is that 17-inch front wheel and you know, obviously the appropriate tires for the road, and then also like I say, that wind protection. Can I get past this guy? Yeah. Let's do a run down here with it in auto mode in sports and see how we get on, and then I'll come back up in manual. It's barely changing gear, to be honest, hanging on to the revs. Plenty of power when you want it. What a thing! Woo! And I love those auto blips, if you will, when you're shifting down the gears. It makes a really nice little growly sound. I mean, the other thing you might expect is when you get into a low speed turn like that it might be choppy when you roll. You know, I'm off the throttle now, and then you might crack the throttle mid-turn, as is normally advised by most sort of riding theory bucks and coaches, and you might expect that getting on the throttle like that is going to give you a little bit of a jolt. But I think the more you ride it, the better you get at the DCT and sort of being really finessed with the throttle like that. Bit of off-roading for you. Oh, you didn't take it off-road? Well, look, I did. It's awesome. Right, stick it in manual. Second gear. You probably won't even need to change gear at all going up here. I think it went down into first in some of these slow corners when it was in auto. This one tightens up. Woohoo! I'm the limiter there. I will say though that when I was riding it in town traffic in London, and it was really heavy, the only way to get from the London Motorcycle Show, which is like basically at the purest, most easterly point of the city of London, and then the way home back to Bristol is the M4, which is like 6 o'clock round the clock, if you will, you know, going out west. So the best way to get back there is to go through the middle of London, right down through like Parliament Square and all that. And I'm pretty used to it because I used to live there, so I enjoy that kind of riding. I enjoy seeing my old I was gonna say old haunts, like I used to go to Parliament Square a lot, but I didn't. I used to work at the BBC, so I commute through that way a lot. And yeah, nice to see some of the old sights. But even so, this bike it's not built for it really, is it? I mean, it's top heavy when the tank's fully fueled up, and I think I filled up just before I set off back. And I also had that bag on the back, which not only did I have my camera bag in, but I also had an Almax chain because I stayed with a friend the night before, and you do not leave a motorcycle in London parked on the street without a massive like ship's chain to sort of delay anyone who decides to try and nick it. And of course, press bikes being nicked is like an absolute nightmare for someone like me. You definitely wouldn't want that to happen. And so yeah, I'm not super tall either. I think I've got the seat in the low position here, but dangling my legs either side a little bit with all that weight at the top, and then the DCT to deal with. It just put me off some little gaps while I was filtering that on other bikes I may have not had a problem with. I'm not saying it's really bad for it. You can drag some rear brake, you can leave it in manual so it doesn't change gear unexpectedly, but still you are effectively just riding it on the throttle. When you're not quite super comfortable touching the floor, and like I say, it feels fairly weighty, and it's wide as well with these beautiful wide bars, which are definitely an asset to this bike, especially when you're cruising on the motorway or sort of maneuvering it around. Then yeah, it doesn't really make for a city package, but I mean, what a pointless review to say it's not a good city bike. It's pretty much good at everything else. Sporty riding, great. Cruising on the motorway, pretty damn great. Off-roading, well, I'm going to the Adventure Centre in a couple of months' time, and we're going to ride the lower spec version of this and do 2 days of proper off-roading, so we'll find out, but I'd imagine it's pretty good. It's got the right engine character, it's so stable, the standing position is brilliant. I'd like some better, bigger foot pegs perhaps, but I'm sure there's some in the accessories catalogue. And yeah, I reckon it's going to be decent. It truly is a proper good all-rounder with better performance, like I say, than the specs would suggest. Anyway, I think I mentioned at the beginning that this bike is going back in a couple of days, and I'll be very sorry to see it go. I mean, it's great to get like super nakeds and really exciting bikes like that, and even the retros are a lot of fun, but the thing is, for all my getting about and stuff and going and filming and going to events or to shows where you're carrying a bit of gear, it's actually the adventure bikes that really are the ones that I get to know and love the best, because I use them all the time. There's not a time where I think, oh, I don't want to sit on the motorway on that for 2 or 3 hours. I try and use them as much as physically possible, and that means you do start to, yeah, they get under your skin a bit, and this one certainly does. And honestly, a lot of people that review the Africa Twin, I was talking to James Oxley at Adventure Bike Rider the other week. We did a Tiger 900 versus Africa Twin comparison, and he said he has an irrational love of the Africa Twin above and beyond the specs. And also, I know that speaking to Simon Hargreaves on the NT1100 launch, obviously a very experienced reviewer as well, and I think he was saying the same, loves the engine. So I'm not alone, and like I say, I'll look forward to the next time I get a chance to spend a decent amount of time on it. And thank you very much to Honda for being as generous as they have been in lending it to me for 5-6 weeks. I think I've had this, not the obviously the best time of year for it necessarily, being winter, but then again, there's certainly worse winter bikes, and like I say, I'm just grateful for any time at all on it. Not long to go now though till the Tiger 1200 launch out in Portugal. It's going to be a 4-dayer, so 1 day traveling out there, 1 day of road riding, 1 day of off-roading and sort of like a dedicated complex, which should be pretty exciting, and then a day to get ourselves back. But I hear it's a long day of road riding, and I guess the off-roading can be as long or as short as you like. But still, I'm going to look forward to seeing how that bike compares to this. Get it out of drive mode. Like I say, it's sort of like labouring a bit because it's down low in the revs. We got space? I can't really go backwards, mate. Cheers. Yeah, how does that bike compare to the GS? Because Triumph have been so specific about the Tiger 12 in their marketing materials, saying that the weight's now lower than the GS and the power's better than the GS and it's got this, that and the other. But also, just having spent so much time on this, you know, it's going to feel as close as you can get to a back-to-back test, in that I think I'll remember what this is like for a good amount of time. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'd love to hear how everyone's getting on. I hope you're managing to get some miles in, you UK bikers. I'm sure a lot of the overseas viewers are still getting good weather, and we're not bitter about it at all. But yeah, let me know how you're all getting on. Let me know if you've got any questions about the bike, and I'll see you in the next one.